Hey, what's going on, roleplayers? It's the Bard here, and welcome back to the corner. Quick announcement, sorry there was no Sub Sunday last week. I was ill and I just could not do any recording at all. I'm a lot better now though, so we're doing today's Sub Sunday. Highest upvoted comment is, I personally would appreciate and enjoy a Drow Bard analysis of every class, every archetype. What are you guys trying to do to me? Look at this stuff, just look at it. I started with one video and now I've got 12. Well, you guys have spoken, so it's going to be another character analysis video then. But who are we going to do? Ranger subclass analysis? Sure, let's do it. Who doesn't love roaming around in the wilderness? Let's go with Ranger then. Hang on a minute. I do these videos in 2 parts. That means 24... You know... How could you do this to me? Well, at least I won't be short of content for a while. So the Ranger gets D10 hit points, that's a good start. Light armor proficiency, medium armor proficiency, shields if you want them, so that's quite useful. As well as martial weapon proficiency as well. So you're a pretty reasonable fighter, you've got the hit points to withstand a lot, and you've got the defenses as well, so that's not too bad. Saving throws are strength and dexterity, which is fine for general combat. I think you're going to need a lot of defenses against something like wisdom or charisma, because there are some nasty spells that can affect you which are based on those saving throws. So perhaps you're going to have to invest in resilient as one of your feats. What you've got is great for resisting certain things like monk attacks, for example, where you have to make certain saving throws against effects or against fighter, battlemaster tactics, but when it comes to general spells, your defenses are quite weak, so some investment in perhaps a wisdom or charisma save is probably to your benefit. So they're giving you 3 picks for your skills, which is a pretty good start as well, because you are kind of a skill-based character. Now, animal handling, it's fine, but I think it's really specific. If you're a monster hunter, like undead or fiends or anything like that, then animal handling is only so useful. It's not bad, I just think it lends itself more to a specific style of hunter, perhaps Beastmaster for example. I don't think it's something you're going to need all the time. Athletics is one of those skills that I enjoy because I like characters with high mobility, so being able to move around the battlefield, get up on high ground, get some advantage, I think athletics is a good thing. It's also good for getting out of grapples and other things like that. Athletics has a lot of benefits, so it's definitely worth a consideration. So insight is on the Ranger list, and they give the example of such as when you're searching out a lie or predicting a creature's next move by reading clues from body language, speech habits, and changes in mannerisms. An interesting skill, and one that's probably pretty useful for you if you're going for a specific kind of build. Perhaps going with something like Urban Ranger. Now this is a class that I'm going to cover in Unconventional Ranger. Yeah, that's going to be coming up soon, so keep your eye out for that one. And for that reason, I think Insight isn't a bad choice. Even though Insight doesn't directly complement things like your favoured enemy, it does suggest how your knowledge of people and knowledge of people's body language and things and creatures can complement the ability, so it gives you almost like some background, like a building block for your abilities. Investigation has the potential to go hand in hand with things like perception and survival, because if you're going to be tracking something, you might want to be working out their intentions. However, it's again very specific, and I don't know if it's something you'll be using all the time. Nature might seem like a bit of a no-brainer, but unless you're in those environments all the time, how useful is it going to be? If you're playing the Urban Ranger, as we've already discussed, then perhaps you're going to want something more like insight or perception, because nature, you're not going to be in there all the time. It's great if you are out adventuring a lot, but the game is Dungeons and Dragons. You're going to be running around in sewers, you're going to be running around in ruined castles. You know, the whole point of a dungeon is it's not part of nature, so it's a useful skill, but just think how long are you going to be in the environments for. If you're playing classic D&D where you are just searching around in dungeons, then yeah, I would say avoid it. If you're going for a more campaign-based game where there's going to be a lot of travelling involved, then perhaps nature could be of some value, especially when it comes to nature and survival combination, like knowing which foods you can and can't eat. Perception is a god tier skill, so if you can get it from elsewhere, such as a racial ability or from say a background, then make sure you pick it up in that respect. If not, then pick it up as a ranger skill. However, you want to get as many skills as you can from different backgrounds and use your more specific ones for your ranger class. Stealth is an amazing skill, you really want to grab this one as soon as you possibly can. Stealth for hiding, stealth for tracking, stealth for doing all kinds of things. It's definitely worth a consideration, and no matter what kind of ranger you are, whether you're nature-based, whether you're urban-based, whether you're a beastmaster, stealth is going to come in so handy for you. I think they should have given you survival for free as a ranger, that's just my opinion. But as it is, you can pick it as one of your skills. Again, if you can get it from elsewhere, get it from elsewhere. However, it is a necessary skill, considering things like your favourite enemy require you to make survival rolls. Survival isn't amazing for actual dungeon crawling, but if you do have a really broad campaign where you have a lot of travelling to do, lots of different environments, then it becomes an amazing skill, especially if you're using it correctly. The example they give is obviously tracks and hunting game and guiding your group around, but it is more than that. Whereas perception might allow you to see things that are lying around in the environment, survival is the kind of skill that you would use to identify specifics. So again, the example that they give is to identify signs that owlbears live nearby. Now if you can do it with owlbears, you can do it with practically anything. And if you know what's going to be nearby, then you can tailor your spells and tailor your abilities, as well as the rest of your party can tailor their abilities to what you're going to be facing. So it really gives you a big advantage in the future. Survival also comes in great for avoiding environmental hazards. So obviously you've got your weather, the quicksand is another example that they use. Survival is just a great all-rounder if you are out and about. Favourite enemy, so it's a good subtle skill. So you get advantage on tracking rolls, which is fine. That's a pretty good thing, especially if you know already what it is you're going after. But I think the more important ability from Favoured Enemy is the advantage you get on intelligence checks. Being able to recall information about certain creatures is usually of much more value in my opinion, because you're going to want to know how their basic tactics work, where you're going to find creatures, how many creatures are usually within a pack, or various other bits of information, perhaps if they have any certain resistances or if they have any special attacks that you need to be aware of. So there can be a lot of bonuses to having that specific kind of advantage. Favoured Enemy also gives you the extra language of whatever favoured enemy you have, and no one's going to say no to that either. Natural Explorer, now this isn't a bad ability either, and again it's a nice subtle one. So you choose your favourite type, so from the various ones available such as grasslands, forest, underdark, that kind of stuff, and you get intelligence or wisdom checks with your proficiency doubled. That's really good. Additionally, after an hour in your favoured terrain, you get difficult terrain does not slow your group's travel. Now that's always useful, especially if you're on a time limit. Your group can't become lost except by magical means. That is amazing. That's about as good as it gets. It saves you on stuff like spells, like no direction, and it's really particularly useful in certain areas like the Underdark, for example, where you're just bound to get lost anyway. So that is really good, especially if you pick the right environment. Even when you are engaged in another activity while traveling, such as foraging, navigating, or tracking, you remain alert to danger. Can't complain about that one. If you're traveling alone, you can move stealthily at a normal pace. No, it's a group game. There will be instances when you're on your own and you have to do that split the party thing, but you're not going to be using this. When you forage, you find twice as much food as you normally would. Great for keeping your party from going hungry, and it really does help to save on rations. So it's a particularly useful skill if money is going to be something that you are meticulously forced to keep track of. It's also really useful if you're playing a more survival-based game, if you've got something a bit darker and a bit grittier, and coming up with food is a difficult thing to do, then at least you can get twice as much as you would normally be entitled to. So it's very good for the more survival-based game, where things are really against you. While tracking other creatures, you also learn their exact number, their size, and how long ago they passed through the area. Wow, that has got to be the best part of this ability. Considering the fact that you can potentially combine the two, Favoured Enemy and Natural Explorer, then you're going to have advantage on all your tracking rolls as well as double proficiency when in your favoured terrain. So if you're going after the right creature and you're going at it in the right terrain, there's no way you're not going to find it. Absolutely no way whatsoever. The Ranger also gets the fighting style. You don't get all of them, but you do get the best ones. Archery is probably one of my favourites. That +2 to attack rolls is amazing, and it really helps to offset the sharpshooter ability for getting extra damage on creatures, so it's a very, very powerful option in my opinion. Defense is great because this game works with low numbers, so your armor isn't as powerful as it used to be. So defense is actually a good, solid fighting style to have. Dueling, I think, is okay. It's not the best of them, I think, but it's good if you want to have a bit of a blend of melee and spellcasting, so at least you can have a weapon in one hand and still have one free for being able to cast spells with. Two-weapon fighting is one of those ones I think is really good for going all-out melee. You might want to consider grabbing the dual wielder feat, and spells like Hunter's Mark, for example, are verbal casting components only, so you can basically have both hands full, still get that spell off, and still start attacking with all of your weapons as well, so there are benefits to that. You don't get a lot of spells as a ranger. In fact, you only get up to 11 by the time you hit level 19, which is just not amazing. However, having some spells under your belt and having a number of casts per day is still quite useful. And they're all nicely themed and they're all specific to the kind of character you want to play. So, they're not bad, they're just not amazing. However, there are a few gems in there that you want to keep your eyes out for. Starting off early, Hunter's Mark, for example, is a great one. Later on, when you get to the highest levels, things like Swift Quiver are amazing. Especially if you're going with archery as your main standard skill. So you get your +2 on your attack rolls, you want to go with sharpshooter, so you want the +10 damage, and of course you're going to have 2 attacks as base, and you'll get 2 attacks bonus as well. That's a lot of damage that you'll be kicking out in one go. If all 4 of your attacks hit, that's +40 damage from sharpshooter alone. If you have 20 dexterity, that's a +5 bonus, so that's again another 20 damage. That's 60 points of damage already, before you've factored in anything like Hunter's Mark, before you factored in your weapon damage rolls, before you factored in any enchantment bonuses you've got. So it's a really powerful style, and you really complement each other quite nicely. We're only up to level 3. Okay, so we're going to skip over the Ranger archetype. We're going to cover Ranger archetypes in part 2 of our Ranger analysis, and we'll get on with Primeval Awareness. This is where it gets awkward for me. They want you to sacrifice a spell slot, and it's 1 minute per spell slot level, so it's up to 5 minutes. But the area of effect is up to 1 mile in all directions. Now, that doesn't sound amazing to me. In fact, it sounds pretty damn poor. First of all, a mile is not as big a radius as you think it is. Second of all, you're going to be in specific places. You know, random creatures just don't turn up in random terrains. You already are aware of this. Now, you will know that there are going to be undead running around in an necropolis. You know that there are going to be drow and spiders and stuff running around in the Underdark. This is not really an amazing spell. Okay, so if you had flyers to deal with, you could be aware that there are flyers, because they're going to be very difficult to track if they're not on the ground. But, again, I just really can't see much use for this, especially if you already have the particular creature as one of your favourite enemies, in which case it becomes completely redundant. Your natural explorer and your favourite enemy allow you to get the exact numbers of the creatures that you're dealing with and the exact amount of them and their size, so it's already a much better ability than Primeval Awareness. However, Primeval Awareness isn't completely useless. It does have a few decent functions in the sense that you can be aware of creatures that you cannot see. I think this is the kind of ability that lends itself to really advanced, really high-level play, because if you've got the kind of DM who's really sneaky and really wants to make it difficult for you, this can be a godsend, but only in the right circumstances. If you were passing by an area that was under the Hallucinatory Terrain spell or the Mirage Arcane spell, then you would be able to be aware of creatures that were hiding within those illusions. So creatures that you might normally pass by, you would be aware of, and it might prompt you to investigate more thoroughly. This is still kind of like a best case scenario thing. Even though you are aware of all those different creature types that are within that 1 mile radius, it's okay, but you are just aware that they're there. You have no idea how many creatures, and you have no idea their location. You don't even have any idea of their direction. It's just a case of, I use this ability, are any of these creatures anywhere within 1 mile of me, either northeast, southwest, or even up or down? And it's like, there are creatures within that radius. That's all you know, and you don't know where they are. So you're still really no further forward than you were to begin with. But it's okay, because if you're within your favoured terrain, you get up to a 6 mile radius. So it's within 6 miles of you. So do you know if any of these creatures exist within 6 miles? There are going to be some creatures within that 6 mile radius. There's got to be. If there's nothing within 6 miles, then you are either way off track, or, you know, something is going seriously wrong, or someone has you under some kind of incredibly strong compulsion. If you can't find any of those creature types within 6 miles, north, east, south, west, up or down, you are in trouble. You are in big trouble because you are way off base. Primeval Awareness is also the most random of creatures as well. It's all the supernatural stuff. Aberrations, celestials, dragons, elementals, fays, fiends, undead. They're just really, really uncommon creatures. Well, they're not uncommon, but, they don't include things like beasts. They don't include things like monstrosities. They don't include humanoids. So, you put up your awareness. Are you aware of any of these really specific things in this area? And if you are aware of them, you still don't know where they are or how many there are. So, for me, Primeval Awareness it doesn't make the cut. I know some people have been using it and having great success with it, but I just don't think it really works. And I have to wonder if they are using it correctly. Extra attack. 2 attacks instead of 1. Enough said. Moving on. Landstride. So, moving through non-magical difficult terrain costs you no extra movement. That's great for you, but it sucks for the rest of your party. You can also pass through non-magical plants without being slowed by them and without taking damage from them, if they have thorns, spines, or a similar hazard. How often do you take damage from spines? How often do you actually take real significant damage from brambles and spines and thorns and stuff like that? To be honest, you really don't. A, you usually have some armor on, and B, if you knew that you were going to take serious damage from walking through a few brambles, you would just go a different way. And chances are, you naturally just cut away foliage and stuff as you walk through them anyway. You already know that it's kind of pointless to walk into an area which is going to get you hurt, so you don't do it. And basically, if you are forced to do it, there are other ways around it. So it just seems pointless. If you really must go around in these terrains, you're going to have to cut away most of it anyway, because you need to get your party through as well. It's really only good if you're soloing. So I'm not going to complain about having advantage on saving throws against plants that are magically created to impede movement, such as Entangle. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. It's just too specific to be used all the time. I think this ability should have come in at level 3, and I think Primeval Awareness should have gone in at level 8, and should have been much more specific in what you can do with it. And it should have allowed you to have things like directional knowledge of where the creatures are at the very least. That would have been a much smarter thing to do. Hide in Plain Sight I think you will never use. It's an ambushing skill. You need at least a minute to prepare a disguise, which allows you to interact with your environment. As long as you stay still, it's fine, and you get a plus 10 bonus. Now, plus 10 is a lot, providing you don't move anywhere. So if the creature doesn't walk right next to you, ambushing it is out of the question. Usually when you have to hide from something, you have to hide quickly, so again, 1 minute is too much setup time. And, I really don't care for the idea of sneaking up on someone dressed as a bush, or if I'm in an urban environment looking like a bin or a public toilet. Did they even playtest this one out? I don't know. The only really practical thing I can find for this ability is if you're going sniper. So you get to have a really decent camouflage. You can kind of set up some foliage and stuff around you so that you've got a good position in which to watch targets from, or in which that you can make sneak attacks from. But even then, it's specific, it's time consuming. I just can't find enough use for it. And of course, you're not going to be with your party either. It really lends itself to that loner approach. And I've always said the loner is a bad way to go because it's a group game. It means you have to split the party in order to make full use of it, and yeah, it's just a really bad ability. And if you haven't got that kind of skill in stealth by the time you've hit level 10, then you're probably doing something wrong. If you haven't got the skills, if you haven't got the stealth skill to a point where you're easily able to hide from things by halfway through your progression, then you're doing something wrong. So starting at level 14, Vanish gets you the ability to hide using a bonus action on your turn, and you also can't be tracked by non-magical means, so you basically have a discount pass for that trace. Rogue can do that at level 2. Pass Without Trace is a spell level 2. So by level 3, Many creatures or many classes have already bested you in this ability. This is hopeless. At level 18, Feral Senses gives you the ability to not have disadvantage on attack rolls against things that you can't see, which is okay. That's kind of nice. Seems a bit late in the progression in order to get that, but hey-oh, at least you have something along those lines. You're also aware of the location of any invisible creature within 30 feet of you, provided that the creature isn't hidden from you and that you aren't blinded or deafened. So you're aware of a creature that is using invisibility to hide, but you can't see invisible creatures, but you still need to be able to see in order to know that... Who writes these things? Seriously, this is really bad. So basically what you're saying is, as long as the creature is invisible, but not hiding, and as long as you can see the unseen thing and hear it, then you can be aware of it. I'm sorry, no, this is just going completely wrong. And finally, at level 20, you get Foe Slayer. You add your Wisdom modifier to 1 attack roll or 1 damage roll per turn against a favoured enemy of your choice. That is so weak. That is so ridiculously weak. Why? Tell me this. If you have a favoured enemy, why did they not give you your proficiency bonus added as damage against all your favoured enemies all the time, starting from the moment you get favoured enemy? It would scale correctly, it would have enough damage to be relevant throughout the entirety of your career, it would be well balanced from start to finish. That is what they should have done. This ability is practically pointless. You can pick up a level in pretty much any other class and have something that's just as good, if not better. A level of sneak attack would do the same. 1 level of rogue. Is there any point in really progressing to level 20 as a ranger? This is the only ability that you would get. You don't get any new spells, you don't get any more casts per day. The only thing you could do is actually change one of your old spells for a new one, and that is the only thing that you would technically be able to do by going from level 19 to 20, as well as getting the Foe Slayer. But you would just get so much better stuff from taking a level in almost any other class. No, I'm not convinced that Foe Slayer is even worth your time or worth your progression. I would definitely say go into something else. In summary, I think that the Ranger starts off with so much potential that it could be so many different things. And then when it gets to the point where you get to around about level 3, everything starts to fall apart. Nothing is of any value, none of the abilities make any sense, everything is poorly worded. I just really can't see any reason going beyond level 5 in Ranger, just because you want 2 attacks basically. And if you're multi-classing into another class that's already got 2 attacks, you're probably better off doing that. However, some of the spells at higher levels are pretty good. As we've already discussed, Swift Quiver is a really good spell for kicking out a lot of damage. It's just unfortunate that most of the abilities were pretty poorly thought out and badly worded. I would say it was for these specific reasons that UA did a complete overhaul of the Ranger. Hopefully that is something a little bit better, but we're not going to cover that today. I think Ranger promised us something great from the start, but as we just got further down the rabbit hole, it just became an absolute mess that's just not playable. There are still things that it can do, there are still reasons to advance a little bit further, but most of it comes from your spells, and a lot of it also comes from your abilities, which are part of your Ranger archetype, which we will go into the next video. I was just so disappointed that the core of the Ranger itself really started to fall apart from level 3 onwards. So was I too critical over the Ranger, or is it a case of you just have to be cruel to be kind? Whatever you think about it, I'd like to hear your comments, so put them down below. Make sure you tune in next time for part 2 of the Ranger analysis, where we cover the Ranger archetypes. And until then, I will see you guys next time at the gaming table.